will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Completing a Simple Tax Return with Unlimited Taxes and More. What you see in front of you is our demonstration software. So let's just kind of get a lay of the land before we move into things. I feel it helps understand where we are and what we're doing and how to get around before we leap into a tax return. What you have in front of you is the work in progress summary. And if you notice at the top, we have these three tabs. These are called the navigation tabs. We're on the 1040 returns tab right now, but we can switch to do business returns if we have a corporate entity in front of us and we need to do that just by clicking on that business returns tab. Back to the 1040. Underneath the navigation tabs, we have the menu, and you could just click on these, just like any piece of Windows software, bring down a little menu. And underneath the menu, we have the toolbar. And think of the toolbar as access to those things that you use all the time, like adding a new return or transmitting to the IRS. We can just click on these things and it'll take us directly to that spot without having to navigate around a bunch of buttons. If ever you're off that work in progress summary, main page, and you want to go back to it, in the toolbar, we have the WIP button. That'll bring you straight to that work in progress summary. Under the toolbar, we have what's called the information bar. And I think the most important thing about this information bar is the version of the software right in the middle here. You can tell we're using 2018.34. If we're having some sort of issue, we want to make sure that we're at the latest version before we call support and ask for help. Also, support may ask you for this user ID number, which is over here on the left. That's handy to have. Just real quick, let's look at what we have in the work in progress summary itself. It's divided into 6 sections. As preparers, we'll use the top 4 most. The bottom 2, these are much more administrative type cues. We'll take a look at these, but not as in-depth. Let's look at the tax returns cue. We can see there's a way to tell how many tax returns are in the system right now. It looks like I have 20. And if I wanted to look at that, I could just click on select the tax return. It'll bring me to the return selection grid. And if I click go, it'll list out all 20 of my tax returns and all the information that can be listed here. Whether or not it has a bookmark or prepare notes, if there's a state attached, all that you can see right here at a glance. If you want to look for a specific tax return when you're on here, just type in some identifying characters, you know, a name or a social, or if you want to look it up by prepare ID, all that information is right here. Back to the work in progress, select return. We also have the status summary list. Now these are those same 20 tax returns, but what we've done here is we've displayed them in the stages that they are currently in. So we've grouped them together, and you can tell, looks like I have 4 of them that are acknowledged by the IRS, and I have 4 checks that are ready to print. And if I wanted to look at these returns, let's see, I want to look at these 8 rejected returns. I can just double click on this, and it'll take me straight to that return selection grid and display all of those rejected returns for me. And I can get to work getting that resolved and resubmit it to the IRS. Status summary list is very handy. Management dashboard reporting. If you're into the reports, you can run a few different reports from here. Most importantly, training returns. I have 5 of them here. This is where we can put those returns where we're playing around with different concepts, stuff that we don't want, where we don't want the data mixed in with our real clients. This is all made up stuff. we can put in here and play around with it in a training mode. Now, in this training mode, remember, things don't print the same, they don't transmit, it's definitely a training mode. We also have new TaxPass mobile app retrieval. This, I don't have any right now, but this brings in tax returns from our app and gets that taken care of, starts the tax return and all that. If you have any questions over that, please let us know. Next up, we have the printing queue. Now, this won't mean so much unless you're printing acknowledgement letters from the state or from the IRS. If you're printing checks from the website, you won't be using this very much. But all that's available through here. We also have a transmit queue. This is used to transmit the tax return to the IRS. In our program, it's a two-step process. First, you queue the return to be transmitted, and then you transmit the return on the work in progress summary. We'll see more of this at the end. We also have an exceptions and rejects section. This one, to me, is the most important because we don't make any money off of these tax returns. If they're just sitting here in limbo, waiting to be fixed, then the money is also in limbo, waiting for the tax return to be fixed. So we make these things very apparent. You can see any of those remote signatures that are out there pending. You can also see anything that's been rejected by the IRS or by the state. If you want to just see those, we can click on that, just like we did in the status summary list. It'll list them all out. And we can double click on each of these, and it'll tell us exactly what's going on. If we want to, this one, it seems that the dependent isn't working for the IRS. We can double click on this, and it'll take us to the dependent that is having the issue, so we don't have to mess around. Looks like it's the son in this case. And what's more is, at this point, if you need to get a hold of this person to maybe get a Social Security card or a copy of an identification or one of those things, a birth certificate, we can just send a text message to this person. So rather than calling them a bunch of times and leaving them a bunch of messages, we'll send them a text message and they'll get back to us when it's convenient for them. We find that's the easiest way to tackle some of these rejections, especially if it's a client that you know you in the past have to reach out to a number of times before you actually make contact. So let's see that again, just real quick. So I have my rejects. I'll list them out. Oh, I know those are all my rejects. I double click on Brian. Looks like maybe I need to get a look at the name on the social. So I'll go ahead and, looks like Brian doesn't get a text message. So this is important to understand. Some of us didn't sign up for it, so maybe he'd like an email instead. So those are all things that we have to consider. When you're signing somebody up at the beginning of the tax return process, we ask this question: do you want a text message? You can mark it. And then we have a list of all the carriers. So all you have to do is find out their carrier. Let's see, AT&T is a big popular one. And that's all you need for text messaging. Oh, well, their cell phone too. There we go. That's all we need for text messaging. It's nice that the program will let us know if we're missing something, if it needs a little bit more information to provide the service for us. It definitely does a good job of letting us know. So in this case, we need a cell phone number, we need their permission, and we need their cell phone carrier. And we can send them a message anytime. Additionally, if we wanted to send a text message to multiple people at once, let's do this checks ready. I can run a report, and at the top there's a send text message button, and everybody will get a message in this list. So all 4 of these people will receive any message that I type in here. Hey, your check's ready. Come pick them up. Let us know when you can get them. And you can do that with state rejections, with refusals from the bank or from the central site. All of that will be listed out there for you. And last but not least, we have these two administrative queues. You may or may not be able to use some of these. Quick reports is just a way for us to pen reports to the work in progress. In case we're using those things a lot, we can come in here to the quick reports list under the utility menu and just double click on any of the reports we've built or that are pre-built for us. Fees paid, why not? It'll move over and that will then become a report that we can run. Other items, these are it's kind of a catch-all. So software updates is here, bulletins from us or from the IRS, text messages, an appointment calendar, all those kinds of things fall under other items. So just as review, since we've covered a lot of ground so far, starting at the top, we have the navigation tabs. This is just in case you want to see or fill out a corporate tax return, 1120, 1120S. We have the menu, works entirely like a Windows program. Just click on it, and you can select any one of those items. The toolbar gives us access to parts of the program that we may be using a lot, so we don't have to go digging for them in menus. Our user ID and the version of the software is in the information bar. And we have these 6 sections of the work in progress summary that do a very good job of giving us a to-do list at a glance. Every time we transmit or print something out, these FICSA rejects, these numbers will change accordingly. All right, so let's take a look at completing a tax return. What we need to do to begin with is click on Add New. That'll get us switched over to entering our Social Security number. Notice we have to enter it twice. It has to match in order to open the tax return. If it's an ITIN situation, we can click on the W7 button, and that changes some of the ways that the tax return behaves, like it displays with all 9s as the social, and those don't print on the final tax return, so you can pencil those things in later. All that is under that W7. So let's put in a Social Security number here. Remember, they have to match, otherwise it won't let us open the tax return. So we'll click OK. Now, before we do anything, I want to cover a couple of items here. Definitely, let's look around, okay? Now, we still have those navigation tabs at the top, and that very much means that even though the business module and the 1040 modules are connected in the same software, you can work in separate spots on both of those modules. We can open a business return and be in a 1040 at the same time, if that's something you need. And notice they both look very much the same, and that's done by we did that on purpose. We want these. It doesn't matter what kind of tax return you're filling out. We want it to be at a level where you don't have to learn anything new and nothing is a surprise. So all of this works exactly the same. All of the toolbar, everything. So let's flip back to the 1040. Right, so we have our menu bar. Now notice we don't have that utility menu or the reports menu anymore. We have return, we have form, we have print. So these things change depending on where you're at in the program. Obviously, the toolbar has more buttons in it than it did before. So that tends to throw some of our newer preparers off. If there is something you're looking for, just know there's 2 places to look for, on the work in progress and then within the tax return. Sometimes those buttons are hidden in places we don't really need to use them. And our information bar, has the taxpayer's name, social, and the date the return was created underneath it. So those things change as well. Along the left-hand side, we have the attached forms list. We have our running total. We don't have any income entered just yet, so it's 0. But we do know we're going to look at both of these, so we want those all automatically entered wherever we can do that. The state information will pop in. All that will be displayed over here. This main section, this is just the open form. This is where we do our work. Right now you can see it's on the client data worksheet. And at the bottom in this gray section, right at the bottom, this very much flies under the radar for a lot of people. This is our active options. And you can see it has line-by-line help. So right now we're on the DOB field. If you didn't know what DOB meant, you could look below and see that it means the date of birth. If you don't know, look below. There's also these 3 items. Right now they're grayed out, but as you work through the tax return, certain ones will highlight, and we'll look at what those do here in just a second. So, all right, so that's kind of looking around. Now, there is a method to completing a tax return in Crosslink. Now, we are a forms-based program, and what that means is we try to present things in a manner that is presented to you. So we'll see when I add a W-2 here in a second that the form, we try to make it look like the form that you would get from the taxpayer. This is definitely a worksheet that we can work our way from top to bottom. If we take a look at the the 1040, just for a quick glance here, notice, we really try to make it comfortable for those people that are used to working in the paper form. So it's very much forms-based. So that's number 1, okay? And so because of that, what we do is we start by entering the client's personal information on this client data worksheet. And the reason for this is, and you'll notice here, let me put in some information here. As I put in my name, notice these things will now pull into the other forms. Now there's my name. I already chose single. It's for myself. There's my social. So if we begin entering information on the client data worksheet, it really helps prevent from having to type that stuff over and over and over again. Okay, so name. Let's look at occupation. Occupation has our choices lit up. And what this means is we're connected to this database menu. Oh, there's our occupations database. And what happens is, at the beginning of the year, if you have a career or a job, maybe you're near a hospital or a factory of some sort, you can enter those jobs here. So as an example, I can enter 005 as my next number, and I'll enter plumber. Okay, so now when I'm on these fields, I can just hit the first letter, and I don't have to type the whole letter or the whole word of that out. So that's one of those places that we're trying to speed up the processing of a tax return, get you through things as fast as possible and as accurate and reliably as we can get it. So we'll get those things set up at the beginning of the year. We're not going to be dependent on somebody else's return, blind or disabled. We do have a phone number, and we're going to enter a cell phone number, and that can be the same these days. We'll need to get an email address if we want to email the customer from Crosslink. So we'll say no. What we want is this one, isn't it? Text messaging, cell phone carrier. Again, choices is lit up, so we can just hit the first letter or begin to type it, and it'll fill in for us. Non-residents, if we need it. Preferred contact, we want text messaging here. Preferred language, IP PIN, if they need it, driver's license number. Issue day, expiration, oops. There we go. And is this a driver's license or a state ID? If we look down below, we also have the worksheets lit up. So if they have multiple pieces of ID, we can enter that. We'll just go with driver's license for now. Now, filing status, if we go single, if we just put a 1 in there, and then we hit tab, you're somebody that's used to the keyboard, we'll skip all that spouse information. Where we don't, if it's married filing joint, so just another example of where we want to skip things if we don't need to focus on them at all. We're going to make this head of household just for fun. Skips down to the address. Okay, and then we have our combat information if we need to. Notice our zones are in a choice list, so we don't have to type that stuff out again. Bank information is also in our databases. So at the beginning of the year, we can enter all that. But the neat thing about this in particular is it'll remember the routing numbers that you enter here. This is one of the few places that does that. We can also choose one from something that's already been saved already. We'll enter our account number, and we have to enter that twice so we don't deposit somebody's refund into a different account than they want. Checking, and now we're here at referrals. Again, choices, pay attention to the bottom, and this we can get into some of our marketing ads. So if you have to fill this out based on what brought the customer into your office, this will work very well. We can do a referral, and Bob is the one that brought my attention to you. Let's see, here's our ACA, our Obamacare. So if you have to answer one of the questions, that means that you're going to fill more stuff out. That's D&E. Everything else, you really don't have to do anything. And I'm just going to say we got our health coverage through, you know what, I want to actually show you that if we mark this, it'll automatically take us to that spot, right? So here's a worksheet that we put together to help you fill this in. And that's automatically added based on whatever selections you have down here. So if I remove that and we say it's through the employer and refresh, notice that goes away. All right, and last but not least, dependents and non-dependents. And if they have more than 9 dependents, there's always an overflow worksheet to enter all that information on. All right, so let's get a first name in here. If the last name matches, you just have to type the first letter. Make them 9. The relationship is another place where we can just type the first letter, get that filled in. Months, lived with the taxpayer. CN for Canada, MX for Mexico. And notice these codes are filling themselves out. Another example of how we're just trying to make our best guess to get you through the tax return as fast as possible. So here, This number 1 indicates that the dependent lived with the taxpayer. The E, that they're eligible for EIC, and the X here means they're eligible for child tax credit. If this isn't the case, you can definitely change these. We're just guessing for you. Additionally, if you're here and they have dependent care, we can add the 2441 just by marking a box here. So just like with the ACA, it'll automatically add those forms based on your selections. ST, that has to do with some state information for Arizona or Illinois, so you can ignore that in most cases. And that's it. So this is where we start, the client data worksheet. All the personal information is pulled into the rest of the tax return, so we don't have to worry about typing phone numbers and addresses and bank accounts and all that stuff again. The next step is you want to add income. So if we go up here to add form, it'll open up our all forms and schedules. And this is all the forms and schedules, anything that we have available to connect to a tax return and send it to the IRS. And notice that the W-2 is highlighted first, so those that like the keyboard can just hit enter right away and it'll add a W-2. If you're searching for something in this, just type on your keyboard and it'll go straight to the form. So if you hit C, it'll take you to the Schedule C. 8879, there it is. Additionally, we have this index tab where if you don't know the name of the form, you can just type in a description, child, child. And look, it goes straight down to those forms that have that in the description. So it's a good way to get a look at where you're going, maybe if you can't remember the name of the form. Also, we have a way to attach a state at the top. So select your state from the list and double click on the main form and it'll begin to add that information for you. So we'll remove this just for now because, again, what we're focused on is income. Before we move into any state or secondary step, we have to get our income together. So we'll open up a W-2, and here you go. Now notice the name is in here, all that stuff leaps in here. And we try to make it look like the W-2 the taxpayer hands you. In those cases, for new people, all you have to worry about is lining up each number, letter for letter, number for number, get it in the correct box, and you're more or less on the right track. If we look at our employers, all of those will be listed in here. And then this is another one that gets saved as we work through it. So anytime you come across a new W-2 with a new employer information, it'll automatically save it in there. The only downside to the bank RTNs and the employer identification numbers saving in this way is that you need to make sure that everything is spelled correctly and that the number is in there correctly. All right, so we'll choose department store. Okay, and now we have our wages. So let's see, we want 2,400, 24 grand, I mean, and maybe 7,500. And notice, watch this zero due over here. As we move through this, our numbers calculate. But again, I can click refresh and it'll give me a running total. Now I'm clicking refresh so I don't change the form I'm on. As you fill out the tax return, it refreshes on its own, so you shouldn't have to do this. It's mostly for me. But yeah, notice we have 10 grand coming back. Maybe that's a little high. So let's give them, should we take more money away from them? Oh, that gives them more. So let's do 2,500. That goes down. So keep all that to together, right? And if you have retirement plans, you can mark the box here. Use your employer code and whatever the contribution was. State information can go down at the bottom, and if they have more than will fit on that form, there is an overflow worksheet. Let's go ahead and enter some information for there we go. And we can add our Georgia. Now that we've added our W-2, our income information, we can add our states and our secondary. Looks like he's going to owe, but he's getting money back. So these things sometimes will line up. We can go play with this. Let's do 750, see what happens. There we go. So now we're getting money back. All right, so we filled out our client data worksheet. All the personal information is there. We've completed our income, so here's our W-2. We've entered our secondary information, our state. If they have any schedules, like a Schedule A or a Schedule C, you can enter that at this point. But pretty much we're done. What do we do before we submit this to the IRS? Well, there's a couple of things. The first being we want to capture any of the information that we may have received from them, like a Social Security card or a driver's license. If we can get an image of this, a copy of these things, that's less that we have to contact the taxpayer if there is something that's wrong. And we have integrated our document archive directly into the tax return. So anything that I put in here will be for this specific tax return. So here we go. Here's everything in here. It's blank. I can import any document. So if you have a flatbed scanner or a document that they bring in electronically or email you, you can import that. You can attach a document to be sent to the IRS. So in case of a death decree or those kinds of things, divorce documents, and you can delete one of the documents that's in here. What I'm going to do is use my handheld scanner. I'll go scan document, and I'm going to scan a Social Security card. Okay, so I can enter a little bit of a description, and this will help me later if I have to try and look this up. We don't need to look through a whole list of things. We can just open up the correct one. And if I aim this and click snap, there's a picture. And I can attach this picture, we'll just save it, to the tax return. There it is. Anytime I need to see it, we'll open it up. And we can print it if we need to. We can email it out, whatever needs to happen. And again, all of that is connected to this tax return. So I don't need to go looking for this anywhere. I'm not missing this unless I'm missing my computer and the software, because it's all together here. Nothing's fallen out of a folder or behind the drawer in the filing cabinet. It's all right here in the tax return itself. All right, so we got pictures of everyone, we got a driver's license, we got Social Security cards, we got all that stuff taken care of. The next thing we want to do is make sure that the return is free of errors, that we're not missing anything. And to do that, we go up here to the Verify button. Click Verify. Now, we've left a lot of things blank in this one on purpose. And we can see there's a lot of stuff going on in here. And just like the rejects, we can click on this and it'll take us directly to the place that we need to focus our attention to get that resolved and set up in a way that is ready to go to the IRS. Each time we fix one of these, we'll be moved to the next one. So I'll put number 1 here. Oh, make sure you collect your fees. And then that one's gone. We're on to the next one. There we are. So let's cheat a little bit. Let's move into a tax return that's more or less complete. Let's see, do we want Brian? And when we click verify, we get this successful message. So this means that all those are clear, there's nothing wrong, and we're ready to print and transmit the return to the IRS. So let's just digress for just a minute here. At the beginning of the year, what happens is we'll sign the database here. It's Shonda, but it's actually Joe's signature, right? So at the beginning of the year, we sign these as preparers, and then all of this information is pulled into the tax return for us. So we don't have to type our name and address and who we work for and all this. We don't have to sign anything anymore. All of that is pulled in automatically. Same with the 8879. So when we go to print things, we'll start with bank documents. Now, you know what? I want to get a tax return as a check in it. Here we go. So we click on bank documents. We get the signed doc. We can do a remote signature through the customer's cell phone. If they have a smartphone, they can sign with their finger, which is especially handy for those spouses that aren't available or aren't in front of you. But I'll just do signed doc for now. Has the client reviewed the bank documents? Read the following to the customer, just to make sure that that taxpayer understands what they're getting into when they sign up for a bank bank product. Click OK. So give it a signature. There's my scribble. If you don't like it, clear and make them sign again, or accept. There's the spouse signature. Accept. Pops up in a PDF format, and anywhere there's supposed to be a signature, there will be. There they are. There's the spouse, there's the primary, and I think if we go to the very bottom here, oh, maybe not. There's the bank that was imported. We can find Joe, that's what I want, the 1040. All of that is, oh, this is the bank documents. That's why I'm not finding that. So all of that is pulled in automatically. And now that we sign the bank documents, they'll be automatically saved in the document archive with a timestamp, so you know exactly when that was signed. And now we're ready to sign the full tax return. Do the same process, sign doc, taxpayer and spouse. PDF again, and this time we should see Joe. Here's the 1040. There's Mr. Preparer Joe. So all of your preparers, everywhere there's supposed to be a signature, just with one signature, your customers will take care of that. Additionally, it's all saved within the document archive in that tax return with a timestamp, so everything is up to par with the IRS. Don't forget to import any other documents that you need. If you're tracking things that you have them sign up for, you can import that into the document archive as well. All right, so that's printing. Last but not least is transmitting. Now, before I do that, I want to show you a couple of tools that help us fill in tax returns and make notes of things. Mostly it's these buttons up here that I want to show you. The first being interview. If you want to fill out all of what we've done today, but just be, oh, the return's already been filed. If you want to have the program ask you questions and kind of interview more or less this information out of somebody, it's a nice way for new preparers to begin and then move into the forms-based method. There is quick return status that lets you look up the status of a tax return. Whichever returns that you have in your system, it doesn't even have to be this one. You can look up and see where the check is at. It's just a handy way of getting somebody off the phone if they keep hounding you for updates for their checks. We have notes. These are prepare notes. The nice thing about prepare notes is that these notes will display immediately when you open up the tax return. So if you have a warning of some sort that you want to put in front of the next preparer or somebody that opens this, or maybe your manager, this is a great way to do it. So again, this will display immediately. And the other thing that's nice about this for our managers is this pulls forward into the next year. So if you have a note that's left on somebody's tax return, you'll see that again next year if it hasn't been deleted. And another note we have is called a bookmark. And if you right-click on any field, anywhere in the entire program, you'll have this option to bookmark that field. And that means we can enter a little note, and when this note is saved, I'll just put it here, this pops up in our verify. There's a bookmark. So it's a nice way to prevent this from getting sent off to the IRS. We can't forward pass this to queue this return. So it's a nice way to keep that here. All right, so that's some of the tools. Now, let's look at Q. I remember at the beginning I said that transmitting is a two-step process. And the first step to that is getting the return queued and wrapped up and ready to go. So we'll click on Q. Oh, we got to clear this bookmark. Delete it. And Q. Ah, there we go. If everything's ready, it'll mark itself for Q. And then we'll click the Q button. And now that is ready to go. Return queued means it's waiting to be transmitted. And since it's our demo software, we can't take a peek at that. But inside here, we would be able to see it, that it's ready to go. All we need to do is open this up, and then we can click transmit one more time, and off it goes to the IRS. And that is our tour of a simple tax return, ladies and gentlemen. All the way from the work in progress to adding a tax return to looking around. Make sure that you keep in mind that you have that line-by-line help and those active options at the bottom when you're inside a tax return. And also the methodology of filling out the tax return. Start with the client data worksheet. Enter your income, so your W-2s, your 1099s, your Schedule Cs, if that's the case, and then move into the states, and all of that stuff will begin to fill itself out for you. And that's it. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, it's been great to be with you, and thank you.